Hi, and welcome to the third episode of Bibliophilia. We're here in the iCannabis radio station as usual. And this time, Scott isn't here. We're here with Kiyomi. Say hi.
Hello.
Hi. We're going to talk about The Monk by Matthew Lewis. But before we do, we have to say that we've got a sponsor. This is our first episode with a sponsor, which is really exciting. Yay! So we're sponsored by Sexy Pizza. You should definitely check them out if you're in Denver. They're open late, so, once you get done listening to this podcast and you're super hungry and thinking about how much pizza you want, call Sexy Pizza. All right. And then The Monk. What did you think?
That it was incredibly hilarious. This book was ridiculously silly and really, really, really dramatic.
This book is... for those who don't know, and not a lot of people know of The Monk. The Monk, if you have heard of The Monk, you've likely heard of it from Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. It is. It's in Northanger Abbey.
It's like mentioned very, very, very briefly in a sentence, like a half a sentence.
Yes, it's mentioned by John Thorpe. And that's how you know he's a jerk, because this is the book that he likes.
The Monk as like an actual piece of literature.
Yeah, he thinks it's highbrow, and it's definitely not highbrow. It's pretty lowbrow.
It's very lowbrow.
So we're going to describe the plot, or attempt to describe the plot.
Can I just put in a trigger warning now that this book is and contains quite a bit of rape, the raping of bodies, the raping of personhoods, the raping of ideas. It's just consistent throughout this book. So just
that
FYI, if that is a trigger at all,
that's like
probably don't want to read this book.
Main plot point in The Monk.
Awful.
All right, so it starts in Spain.
And they all have Italian names.
Yes, everyone's Italian.
I'm assuming this was during the Inquisition, because the Inquisition gets mentioned at the very end of it.
Yeah.
In Spain. But I was also really confused because everyone has Italian names, and their government is very Italian-based. As in, like, the dukes, like, run everything, and, like, the higher families run. I didn't know too much about Spain, but I know more about Italy, and that... So I'm not sure, like, does Matthew Lewis know anything about Spain?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, some background. Matthew Lewis was... so the Gothic novels came out all around the same time, and they all kind of have the same things. We posted something about it a while ago on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Bibliophilia podcast. But... like elements of a Gothic novel. And Matthew Lewis decided to satirize the Gothic novel, so he took everything to an extreme. But he was also like a 19-year-old boy who obviously was really wealthy, and because it's not like they were publishing the books of the servant class. So he was obviously like a really wealthy kid who kind of got his way. And I feel like that's a big part of The Monk, that you see that a lot. Like, it's not the work of someone who's not completely spoiled, rotten.
Yeah, definitely was written by someone who was very privileged and had no idea what was happening to people who were under his class at all.
Oh. I'm just taking it so you stop flipping the pages.
Oh, but I love it so much.
So it starts out in Madrid/Italy.
Yes. It starts with Ambrosio. The story gets really long and complex, and there's like 16 million characters and 18 stories that all like interlapped with each other. But it starts out with the monk Ambrosio in Italy, and he is this great orator, and he like gives these amazing sermons that everyone in Madrid comes to go see. And this is where we meet Antonia and her aunt in the church.
And they have come because he's such a great orator.
Yes.
And then once they meet some guys there who the aunt flirts with shamelessly. And then once the sermon's over, they're all going their separate ways. And Ambrosio goes into the back and is like, that was the best sermon I ever gave.
I'm so good at this.
I'm such a good sermoner.
But I'm like, really humble though.
Yeah.
And like, God really loves me. And like, It's because I'm so humble that I've had all these great gifts bestowed on me.
I'm the best orator ever.
So
Yeah.
not being humble while being humble.
Yeah, and this is like the first sign that he's gonna be corrupted.
I feel like Ambrosio was always corrupted.
Okay.
I don't feel like there was like no part of him that was not corrupt.
Yeah,
And even in his childhood, they describe him as like being good, but then like instantaneously they like turned him away from that sort of those feelings and made him be like fear God.
yeah.
Which in a sense like
And he was a foundling, just so, because that's important, that he was found on the steps of the church. And so they really had a chance to mold him into the most godlike being they could. And they totally screwed
they
up.
did a really bad job.
They did a really bad job.
They failed. And so like this book was also it was against the church.
Yeah, it was really
Basically.
against the church. Because after the Ambrosio thing, after we see him being kind of cocky and all in himself, there's a nun who...
Matilda.
No,
No.
the nun, Agnes.
Agnes.
Yeah, because Matilda comes a bit later. It's really, there's a lot of things. So there's a nun, Agnes, who ends up fainting, and then... Okay, wait.
No.
One of the guys who was flirting with Antonia and her aunt
Yes.
stays after to drop off a note for a nun. And she ends up fainting, and they're like, oh, what's wrong with you?
No. So she goes up to Ambrosio for confession, and the letter falls from her bosoms.
Oh.
As bosoms are continuously
Yes.
mentioned in this book. I think it's written on almost every single page, bosom is said, because this was written by a 19-year-old boy who had no other word for bosom. Unbosomed was
Yeah.
my favorite. But anyways, this letter falls out, and he picks up and he reads it, and he's like, oh my God. And the letter is from Raymond, one of the dudes, and it's like this confession of love, and he's going to steal her away and take her home because she has been impregnated
Yeah.
by him in a fit of passion.
Yes.
So now she needs to get out of the cloister because she's going to be in a lot of trouble.
But she's in a lot. He tries to hold it over her, Ambrosio does.
Yeah.
But that fails like within 10 seconds.
She begs her forgiveness. She's just like, I didn't want to be here. This was not meant for me. And here I am. Please have pity in your heart. I'm so sorry. Like, this was wrong and I know it. And I'm very, very sorry for it. And he's like, psh, no.
Yeah.
You are a sinner. I will take you to your mother superior and she will deal with her. And then the mother superior is this incredibly vain woman who's terrified of her convent, like, being put under some sort of scruples.
There are no good Catholics in this book.
No.
Like, there's not a single, like, it's all, if you were traumatized by Catholic school, then this book speaks to that experience for you.
No good Catholics.
No good Catholics.
Everyone outside of the church is pretty good, but everyone in who...
Because we'll get into some stuff later.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the main characters who are from outside or tend to be quote-unquote good people or think they're doing good, at least.
So the Mother Superior takes Agnes away.
Yes.
And then we go outside to the courtyard, and there's a young monk there talking to Ambrosio. Because Ambrosio's feeling pretty good about himself after getting this nun punished.
He's like, yeah, things are going good.
Anytime anything
Fear
happens,
of God.
Ambrosio feels good about himself. It doesn't matter really what happens. He's got a good self-image, I think.
So there's this other young monk that lives in the abbot with him, and they're really close, but the young monk is prone to melancholy and fits of despair and sighs deeply all this time and is so beautiful and wonderful and is a wonderful like student of Ambrosio, and Ambrosio loves him dearly. He meets him in the grotto.
Yeah.
There's a grotto, as there always are in Gothic novels.
Yes.
At some point, there has to be a grotto. They meet in a grotto, and there's a poem.
There's always poems. Okay, so one thing about this book is that it keeps stopping for poetry.
I'm sorry, but I feel like Matthew Lewis he wanted to be a poet. He wanted to be a poet so badly, and he wrote this book so that his poems could be in the book.
It's just not good
Because the
poetry.
poems make no sense to the plot at all. They're just kind of thrown in there. They always mention bosoms as well.
I know there's one like later from a character that you don't really even have to think about at all, and it's like, here's a poem I wrote.
Yeah, the little servant
Yeah.
boy wrote a poem.
The page.
The page. It was a servant boy.
He's a servant boy.
But yes, I think I skipped like 4 of the poems. I didn't even read them.
Okay, because they're really all kind of about how great Matthew Lewis is.
That he's such a good poet. Anyway, so they meet in the grotto. There's a poem about the grotto. That was just apparently on the grotto wall that's like 3 pages long. So I guess it's like up and down the wall.
And then something exciting happens. Rosario. The guy's
Rosario,
name is
the little
Rosario.
monk.
Yeah. Which is a lady's name, in my opinion. But
Well,
yeah, that's important because then Rosario's like, I have something I have to confess to you.
I'm a woman and I'm in love with you, and I snuck into this monastery as a monk so I could be closer to you and learn about you. And like, she makes it sound like super pure and really nice. Like, she just wants to be his friend. She just wants to be there for him. She wants to learn everything that she can from Ambrosio.
Yeah, but they start having sex like almost immediately. Like there's no waiting period.
No, there is a waiting period
Like
because
2 minutes.
like he wants to confess her or something, like give her up or something like that. And he gets bit by a snake. I don't even remember what happens. The drama is nonstop. He gets bit by a snake at some point. He gets bit by a snake and he's like dying. And she comes to him and like sucks the poison from him so he lives. I'm sure he makes some sort of confession or something. I don't even remember.
Okay.
It was very dramatic.
It's a really hard book. I'm just going to say this. Like, it's a really hard book to explain the plot of because I read it and like, after finishing it all, I was like, yeah, I've got this solidly. And then Kiyomi's obviously read it more recently. And then when they were talking to me about what is in the book, I'm like, I don't really remember. Because it's like weird. Everything's happening like so fast.
And I was worried when I first started reading this book because you had told me it's a parody.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't see how it's am I dumb? Am I not thinking of the parody? But then like you get it and it's like every other page is some type of ridiculous drama where you're like, okay, I can see this is a parody. And I haven't read that many Gothic novels. I mean,
yeah,
Dracula, Frankenstein. Can Jane Eyre be considered Gothic?
I think they do consider it Gothic.
It's like along the lines, but it's later on.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that these really, because even Dracula and Frankenstein are later. These are all the Gothic novels like Evelina and Pamela and in Northanger Abbey, which we mentioned before, but it's because Catherine loves the Gothic novels, and that's supposed to be kind of a joke on Gothic novels too, that there's always some mystery happening. And she mentions the mysteries of Udolpho. I had to read The Castle of Otranto in college, and that one was pretty amazing. I think that there was like it ended with this giant demon thing. I remember it being like a giant like black ghosty creature that comes out of the walls or something. It's that's the kind of stuff that happens in Gothic novels, and there's a big emphasis on virtue and choices between virtue and vice, which really come into play.
Is in this book a lot. Anyways, so Rosario is actually Matilda. Mm-hmm. Matilda sucks the poison from Ambrosio, and Ambrosio lives, and like she is dying because she consumed this poison now from him. Like the monk gets better, and everyone's like, oh, the monk is better. And now Matilda is dying, and Matilda is still a monk at the time under the name of Rosario. So she's still in the abbot. And she is dying, and everyone's just like, she's going to be gone. She's going to die. And the monk, like, comes to her, and she admits to him, like, I came here because I just wanted to be near you. But that is not true. I love you, and we should make out, and I have all these passions and feelings for you. And he's like, I do too. I have so many. And he mentions quite a bit in the beginning of the book that he's now past the age of 30, which is past the age of lust.
Yes.
Apparently. So once you hit past 30, you should be fine. You're good. You're golden.
No more lust.
No more lust. You're good. So he's really surprised that he has like these hot, tumultuous feelings for Matilda. And she's dying, and then they have sex.
And then he saves her because he wants to have sex again.
Yes. So they have sex, and the next morning he's like, "Oh my God, you're dying, and this is so horrible, and this is so sad. You're gonna die. You're gonna die, and who am I gonna find to have sex with me now?" Like, his main goal to save Matilda is not because he loves her or wants her to live, or as like another human wants another human being to live and go on with their life. No, he is worried, well, I'm a monk. Who's going to have sex with me now?
It'd be really hard as a monk to find someone.
This is difficult to get a mistress. And so, because he has needs and desires. Now. He didn't have them before. But he did.
And then...
he did, because he had that painting of the Madonna in his room that he would sit and stroke and, like, talk to all the time.
But that
was actually Matilda.
Kind of lust. But because that made him feel holy in a way. Like, he was really good at loving the Virgin Mary.
Think he was holy,
yeah,
though. But it wasn't a pure.
But I think that's it with all of this. Like, he's not a pure kind of guy.
That's true.
He's not a virtuous guy. So, yeah.
But before all of this happens, there's actually this story that's intermittent. I think this happens before, where...
okay, I'm not sure what happens.
The nun Agnes.
Yes.
We hear her story and her lover's story.
I don't think it's Agnes's story so much, because it is just a story.
It's Raymond's story
that's put in there. It's a story that's like, there's like 75 pages of just this side story. Like, Raymond goes to his friend, who's the main guy's name?
Lorenzo.
And it turns out that Lorenzo is Agnes's brother.
Right.
And so when Agnes disappears, the men in this novel, like, normally you think of these old, like, 18th century, 19th century characters, male characters, are always very manly, and, like, Mr. Rochester is, like, broad and strong and gruff.
And that's from Jane Eyre.
But not this book. So Lorenzo can't reach his sister.
Well, they're all cavaliers. That's the thing. They're cavaliers in Spain.
But Lorenzo's sister Agnes is in the church, in the convent, and he goes to see her and he can't find her. So he does what any normal person would do, which is essentially, it seems like he just gives up on life and goes and sits in the bed. And he's like, with worry. He's so sick with worry.
Well, before all that, like, when Agnes gets dragged away, because the letter falls from her bosom, she gets dragged away. Lorenzo's outside and runs into his friend Raymond. Like, they don't know what's happening inside the church. They had left the church.
Yeah.
Lorenzo had fallen asleep and had, like, this amazing dream about Antonia and them getting married. His pure dreams, whatever. He runs into Raymond, his friend, who's actually Agnes's lover, and Raymond confesses himself. Like, this is what's happened. I'm in love with your sister, and I want to take your sister. No, this is like right when Agnes is discovered, he runs out, and then it becomes Raymond's story forever.
Yes. Raymond's story is so weird, but the conclusion... So, in Raymond's story, I'm going to do it really briefly because it really doesn't add anything to the plot. And so Raymond meets Agnes. Agnes's mother had, like, a rough pregnancy and basically said, oh, if this baby comes out just fine, I give it up to God. The baby goes to a convent, which, it's very fair to the child. So Agnes falls in love with Raymond, but she can't be with him because she's got to go to the convent. And so he's staying at her family's house because he's friends with Lorenzo. And then they...
He's actually staying at the house because he saved the wife from those marauders.
How?
He ends up in, like, the woods.
I thought that was before. Mm-mm. Oh, my God. It's so confusing. Okay, he ends up in the woods, and he's... Oh, because he's lying about who he is.
He's going to...
Yes.
His, like, uncle was just like... You will not go beneath my name anymore. You must go into the world as somebody else and claim your fortune. So
make it as yourself.
Yeah, you're your own person. You're not using your name. It's just bullshit the whole time.
He goes off and he meets these people in the woods, and it turns out they're murderers. As people, they just kill people who go through there, and the wife, like, tips him off, like, hey, my husband's gonna kill you. And then he's saves the life of a baroness there, and then he's living in their house.
Yes, and that's how he meets Agnes.
And they plan to escape.
And
There's
the
a ghost
Baroness
story.
falls in love with Raymond, and he confesses that he loves Agnes, and she thought he was confessing to her that he loves her, and then she's just becomes this vengeance demon. I've been watching a lot of Buffy, so vengeance demons are things. But there's she just becomes crazy and angry and will thwart every turn. So they have to like escape basically.
And they use the cover of this ghost that
story,
supposedly lives in the house that they're at, the castle, essentially. So they use the story of the ghost because this nun, the bleeding nun, shows up like once a year or something.
Yeah.
And they leave the gates open for her. And so the point is that Agnes will dress as the bleeding nun and leave, and Raymond will be waiting for her. Well, Raymond waits for her. And a nun shows up and they drive off, and then, no, it's not her. It's actually the bleeding nun.
The horses run to death, basically. And like, the whole carriage is destroyed, and everything's destroyed, and he's just holding this woman that he believes is Agnes. And when he wakes up, like, the horses are dead. He's, like, strewn upon the ground, apparently, like, miles and miles, like a 2 days journey ride, even though he did it in a night.
Yeah.
And the woman is gone, and no one knows what he's talking about. And it turns out that he actually had encountered the ghost. Oh, because he ends up at this
Hotel.
the hotel
where he meets the wandering Jew.
And the ghost has been visiting him, visits him every night, and he's unable to sleep, and he can't get better. He's just very sick because he can't sleep because the actual ghost is visiting him, and he's the only one that can help her, and that's how he runs into the wandering Jew.
Melmoth the Wonder. But they never say Melmoth in there, but that's his name, I think. That's another Gothic novel, Melmoth the Wanderer. So, but yeah, and he helps cure him.
He performs this ceremony. The ghost comes up, and the ghost says, like, you have been destined to bury my bones, even though it's been like hundreds of years since this ghost story. Apparently, like, when she died, she destined him to bury her.
I think because he pulled her out, right? Oh, okay.
But it was before. It was like, when you were born, you have been destined.
So anyway,
like,
he does it. He goes and he finds Agnes in the convent, and then they have sex. And he's telling this story to Lorenzo, her brother. And basically the point of the story is, that's why I had to have sex with your sister.
Yes. And he's like, don't be mad.
Don't be mad, brah.
Brah, don't be mad.
I had to have sex. I had to.
And after they had sex, Agnes was just so upset with what had happened that she was like, I never want to see you again. This was totally wrong. Oh my God, I'm never talking to you again. I'm going on with my life without you.
There are a lot of issues with purity in this book, which we're going to get to.
Are we?
Okay.
Because this plot is so long and so extensive.
Long. Okay. Okay. Then Antonia, remember Antonia? We'll try and get through the plot as quickly as possible. It's so weird. So remember Antonia. She's the beautiful girl that Lorenzo's in love with. He had the dream that he's going to marry her. Well, her mother gets sick, and she's like, oh, I should call that monk, that kindly monk.
The great orator.
Yeah.
He shall take care of everything.
She calls him, and he never leaves the monastery, ever. But he does this time, because she's a hottie.
She's a hottie with the body, with the bosoms.
And she's super pure.
And she's, oh yeah, he gets over Matilda real quick. So in the Abbey, they've had, it says in the book, it's been a week. And his love for her has died out. He's over it. He's done. He's like, Matilda, you are kind of, you're kind of a whore. And I'm not really into that, A
lot of slut shaming.
Like, yeah. Oh my God. It was so awful. And she's just like, dude, what?
Yeah, she's like, you had sex with me too. Like, we're in this together.
And he's like, no, you tempted me. That you're vile and disgusting. And he just talks about how much he hates her and he's disgusted by her and he's grossed out by her. So and then he runs into Antonia and he's like, oh, you are so pure. You're the exact opposite of Matilda, and I want you so badly.
So he goes to the house. He leaves the monk. He leaves the monastery for like the first time ever in his life. But he can't let people know, so he does it in secret. And he goes to the house and tends to Elvira, Antonia's mother. She slowly gets better, but he likes being there. So she's getting better, and there's this moment where he's in the room with Antonia, and he basically tries to rape her. Yeah. And Elvira walks in, and she's like, she interrupts it, but she's trying to play it cool. She's like, I'm not going to ruin your reputation, so...
Just leave the house and never come back. And she never explains. The thing about Antonia is that she's so pure that she knows absolutely nothing about life.
She even has a Bible where the dirty bits are. It's like her mother wrote her a special Bible that had the dirty bits taken out.
Yeah.
So that she would know about sex.
So she's completely naive about the world. And so, like, she has no idea what happened to her. Like,
she knows it was wrong.
She knows it was wrong, but she doesn't realize she was sexually assaulted. And, like, she doesn't really understand that she was in danger.
Yeah.
And, like, and her mother, instead of just being like, so there's some things I haven't told you about sex that you should really know because this just happened to you.
There was no after-school special.
Yeah, there's no after-school special. Instead, she was just like, don't talk to him again. He's a bad man. Just don't talk to him. He's a bad man. Don't see him again. And she's just like, okay, cool, Mom. And, like, that's it. There's her sexual education right there.
And that's a problem because later... when Ambrosio is like, oh, I'm so taken up by passion by this pure, pure lady, he's visited by Matilda, and she's like, I know what you've been doing, and I want to help.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And then she takes
him. I know you no longer love me. You love someone else. I know. Don't deny it.
I'm here to help.
I can help you because we're friends now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to help.
Benefits.
Friends. No, there are no benefits.
They stop benefiting.
Yeah, because she's like, I know you don't love me, so why am I going to have sex with you? Please.
She tells him that she's been involved in the dark arts, and she takes him down to this.
That's how she saves herself earlier on when she was going to die.
Oh, yeah.
She's like, you can't tell anyone about my secret. And she runs off into the basement.
Yeah.
Into the dungeons that are the crypt, basically, that's between the abbot and the convent.
Yeah.
So there's like a graveyard in between. And so she's down there and he just sees flashes of light and hears random moaning.
No, this is later he does hear the random moaning. When they go down again, because after she saved herself, they go down again together so that she can introduce him to like a demon that she claims she has power over. And then they can figure out how to help Ambrosio seduce Antonia.
Yeah, so she's
and that's
a witch.
when he hears the moaning. That's when he's like, what's that moaning? Better not explore it.
Yeah, I'll worry about that later. I really want Antonia. I want her now. I want her so bad. This whole book is like, half of it is just like him just talking about his passion for Antonia. And it's really awkward and strange and really creepy. And it's like, he's always just like, this is wrong, but I want her so bad, so I don't even care.
Yeah, the excuse is that he'll have plenty of time to repent later.
Yeah, Matilda convinces him.
Yeah.
He doesn't really need convincing, but it's put on her.
The demon that they meet gives him what amounts to 18th century roofies, which is like a twig that he puts by her.
It's a silver myrtle branch.
Yes, that he's supposed to put by Antonia at night, and she'll be so asleep she won't wake up while he violates her. And when she wakes up, she'll know she was violated, but she won't know who did it, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, or when. Or she just knows that it happened.
Yeah. But plot thickens when he's about to do this, and Elvira comes in.
Oh, yes, because Elvira had a dream that her daughter was screaming for her help. So Elvira wakes up, comes in, and this...
faints dead, right? Or did she get a little sick and then die?
No, she's confronting him and talking to him about it. She's screaming for help. She starts screaming for help for, like, the woman that lives in the closet. There's a closet in between the rooms, and that's where the waiting lady sleeps.
But it's like an old-time closet.
Yeah,
it's not like one of our closets
it's
where
like,
we're like,
it's like a butler's
got the
pantry.
water heater
it's like
in here too.
In-between room.
Yeah.
But yeah, she starts calling for help, and Ambrosio freaks out and suffocates her with a pillow, and she dies. Mm-hmm. And so she's dead, and he's like, oh, fuck, and runs away.
And it's okay. No one suspects him because they think that she died and was struck down. The neighbor lady thinks she was struck down because on a Friday she ate a chicken wing. Yeah. This is a sin punishable by death. On a Friday she ate a chicken wing. And she really gets it. Like she goes... Yeah. She's really upset about that chicken wing.
The lady that owns the building that Elvira is staying at, she is very religious and very devout, and she follows all the sacrifices and all the fastings that occur in like high Catholic life. and she caught Elvira eating a chicken wing.
Yeah,
and
on a Friday.
And you're not supposed to eat flesh on a Friday, unless it's Lent and it's fish. It's fish. You can only eat fish.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so she tells her not to do it, and Elvira's like, whatever, it's not a problem.
This is delicious.
And then of course, she's like, you're gonna die. I swear bad things are gonna happen. And Elvira's kind of like, just leave me alone. I want to.
And she's actually telling this story to Ambrosia.
Yeah.
Because she runs off to him because later on she sees Elvira's ghost.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, she doesn't see her ghost. The daughter sees the ghost and tells the lady, whatever. Anyways, even Ambrosia is just like, the story is dumb. Can we hurry it along? But yeah, she was like, I saw the ghost, and the ghost popped up, and she had snakes for hair, and she was covered in like chains or something like that. And she goes, damn, it was like, damn the chicken bone. It was because the chicken bone. And then brimstone consumes her. And like, this is the story she's relating to Ambrosia of what she saw of the ghost. That if she had not eaten that chicken wing, she would not be in hell right now, which is apparently where she is.
That's what happens. So no chicken wings on Fridays.
So don't eat chicken on Fridays.
That's the moral of the whole story.
And I love it. Even Ambrosia is just like, dude, okay.
Yeah.
No.
So then he's got a little bit more time to, now that Elvira's out of the picture and she was kind of questioning what he was doing with her daughter, now he can really put his plans into action. There's going to be a parade and people are going to be distracted.
Yeah, and Matilda is there for him with the mirror. Can we mention the scrying mirror?
Yeah, there's a mirror. It's basically like a magic mirror where you can look and see what people are doing. And it just so happens that when Ambrosio looks in, it helps you see the person you're thinking about the most. And it just so happens when Ambrosio looks in, and of course the person he's thinking about the most is Antonia. She's about to take a bath. And a bird flies in the window and nestles itself in her breast.
So Ambrosia's watching her bathe, and even in her bathing, she's modest. Like she covers, like the water's cold, so she gets out of the bath and she recovers herself and is like looking around as though she's being watched. And like this bird flies in and like nestles in her breast, and like
that's actually happens to me every single day. I have to
you have to close windows.
Close windows all the time.
Because the birds just fly in and nestle in your breast.
It
happens.
Love
in the bosoms. They love bosoms.
They love them.
But yes, and it's at that moment he's like, I can take no more. I must have Antonia. Like he's been aroused so much by this bird in her breasts that like he will do anything to have Antonia as his own. And so Matilda's like, let me help you.
Yeah, that's where they get. Yeah. That was way forward. We just went back. It's such a confusing plot. So the parade's happening, and Ambrosio takes Antonia. He gets her knocked out somehow, and he takes her down to the crypt to rape her. But things kind of go off the charts because Agnes has been missing this whole time. Like the nuns took her off. And
during the parade,
Lorenzo had got a note from the Pope saying it's cool. She doesn't have to be a nun anymore. The nuns are ignoring this. So during the parade, they kind of out the big head nun in charge, and it turns into riots in the streets of Madrid.
They riot. So there's this beautiful, amazing parade to celebrate these random saints, female saints, that are celebrated at this convent. And everyone in Madrid has come to see it, and it's beautiful and whatever. And then Lorenzo, like, gets up, and he's just like, arrest this proprietress. And like the head nun is to be arrested, and he like tells Agnes's story and that Agnes is missing, and we don't know where Agnes is, and like this woman is evil, and like one of the other nuns, Saint Ursula, gets up and is just like, I concur with this is correct, and like tells people what happened to Agnes. And St. Ursula's under the assumption that Agnes is dead, that she saw her be poisoned by Mother Superior and that she's dead. And so riots, like Madrid is just incised by this.
And there are some nuns who escape. It's actually kind of sad because you think there are all these nuns who had nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And they're running for their lives because people are out for blood for the nuns. And
the book actually describes the Mother Superior being dragged down underneath the people and basically beaten to death, and then they continue to beat her corpse until it's like this bloody, messy pulp that Lorenzo just like watches happen.
I feel like that's deep-seated rage, and that's not just like, oh, some random nun we've never heard of is missing. That's like deep-seated, we really hate these nuns kind of thing.
They're really tired of being told to feel bad about themselves.
Yeah.
It's like Catholic Church wants to do.
So they, okay.
So nuns are running away, fleeing. Some of them are being murdered. The whole convent is in fire, and they...
Ambrosio has no idea this is happening because he's underground
He's
with
underground
Antonia.
with Antonia. But so are other nuns. Because they have escaped underground, because there's like a
But they come in later. They're not there right when Ambrosio's there.
So first, we actually find Agnes before we go into what Ambrosio has been up to with Antonia.
But he's definitely down there by himself somewhere.
Oh, yes.
With Antonia.
He's down there with Antonia.
But they find Agnes behind. That was the moaning from earlier.
They actually, I don't even know how they heard her. They find her, so there's like the statue.
She's behind the statue and like down the stairs.
Down the stairs, yeah. So there's like this underground place that there's also a bunch of statues, and
I imagined that, like,
some of the nuns are
Phantom of
buried
the
when they
Opera.
die. But some of the nuns, yes. So some of the nuns are hiding down there. And then there's like this statue where Lorenzo finds the nuns and he's like, it's okay, I'll protect you. And we meet Virginia, which we'll get into later. One of the more pious of the nuns. And she tells the story about this statue that's like cursed, like don't touch it. This is why, because some robber lost his hand or whatever. And Lorenzo's like, Pasha, you guys are crazy. And he goes and investigates the statue. And it turns out what they believe is the robber's hand that got like infused onto the statue for touching the statue.
Yeah.
Is actually a knob. And he turns the knob and like it springs open and forward. And like they push it aside. And then there's a big hole in the ground. And they go down the hole. And they find Agnes in the hole.
Yes. With her dead baby.
Clutched in her arms.
The baby is being eaten by maggots.
It even mentions in the book, Agnes recounts her story about how she would wake up with worms entwined in her fingers because she was like, that were eating her baby. The baby is dead.
Yeah, the baby didn't make it.
Shockingly enough, the baby expired.
That's horrifying.
Very quickly after being born in this cavern in the basement to its emaciated mother.
So they save her, which is good. Everyone's happy about that. But then they hear screams. And that's Antonia being violently raped by Ambrosio.
Ambrosio can no longer contain himself. He constantly mentions how, like, he wants to do this, like, Antonia needs to be conscious, and, like, he's pretty sure that, you know, she'll give in to him once he explains so well why he needs to have her.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but if I have to force myself, I mean, I will.
And he kind of had to.
And he
I
did.
guess.
He does. He forces himself on her.
You have to in any way.
And she's just crying. And as soon as he's done raping her, he's like, this was wrong and this is gross and you are disgusting. How dare you convince me to rape you? Is basically what he blames everything on her. That, like, if you weren't so good and pure and so attractive, I wouldn't have had to gone through so much, this entire book to rape you.
And yeah.
and Antonia.
So this is a sad thing because
it's
she
a really horrific and very graphic scene.
Yeah. And it's
and she's like dragging herself, trying to escape from the dungeon.
She does get
and
out.
He pulls her down, and he's like, "Oh no! You can never leave because if you leave, first of all, you're ruined." And she's like, "I am ruined. Like, there's no hope for me. I'm completely ruined."
That's the problem. Like,
her life is over. She has been ruined.
Yeah.
She will never be married. She will never have a future. No, everyone will shun her. But he is more afraid that, you know, she's going to tell people that he raped her. Like, what the fuck is she going to get out of this?
Yeah. And then...
And so his solution is that she remains in the crypt and he will come visit her.
And rape her,
And
probably.
like,
I mean, let's
continuously
just
rape her.
be
And
honest.
and
fortunately, that doesn't happen because they're all down there. He doesn't realize that there's been this riot. He doesn't realize all these people are down there.
Matilda shows up.
Someone has found him.
Matilda finds him and goes, the place is on fire. Place is crawling with cops. We need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. But before that happens, he gets caught.
Yeah, he like...
I think he gets caught leaving. And then they find Antonia.
Yeah, so he runs out of the crypt because Antonia sees what he's doing. He's trying to get out. So she like basically goes, bitch, please, runs by him, gets out the door first. And so he's running after her, and she's just screaming down the hallways because she hears the archers, the cops coming. And so she's like screaming for help. And so he's like, fuck, you need to shut up, and does the same thing he does with Elvira, and he stabs her in the chest.
Yes.
He stabs her, and she's clinging to this column, just screaming while he stabs her. And then I think Raymond comes around the corner, and he's like, whoa, and runs back off to the crypt he just came from to find Matilda and be like, jig is up. We need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And then Lorenzo shows up. And Lorenzo and Antonia had kind of a love affair thing go. I mean, like, he would have married her.
He would have married her.
Except this
he
thing
wanted
happened.
to.
Yeah. And she's dying, and she's stabbed, and she's like, oh, we can never be married. Not because she's stabbed, but she's like, because I'm so unpure now.
Yeah, I've been
so
destroyed.
Unpure. And his response is, I know.
It's okay.
That's it. You're right.
Yeah.
You're so right.
We can never be together.
We'll never be together. But it's okay because she dies, and then he marries Virginia.
Who I love the aptly named Virginia.
Yeah. She's probably a virgin.
This
she is a virgin.
beautiful virgin that comes into his life and changes his heart. But anyway, so Antonia's dead. Lorenzo's bereft. Agnes is alive. Raymond is happy. Ambrosia and Matilda run off. They get caught and arrested, and they don't want to restart another riot. So they're just like secreted them out, and they are in the hands of the Inquisitors now.
Yes, Spanish Inquisition time. And Matilda takes all the blame for... In a weird moment, they're being tortured, and then Matilda takes all the blame, and then she shows up in Ambrosio's cell, and she's like, listen, I made a deal with the devil to get out of here, so they're not going to burn me alive. That's just what they think they're going to do. You can also make a deal with the devil and get out of here, and then the devil shows up.
Well, she hands him a book, and she's like, it's up to you. Here's this book. Read the line on the third line on the 7th page backwards, like some amount of time.
Yeah.
And the devil will appear before you.
Oh,
and he's like, no, I will never agree to this. I am pure. I will receive God's forgiveness, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, okay, whatever, and leaves the book. And she's like, it's up to you. Peace out. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And she tells him that she's essentially a demon. She was sent by Satan to... She sold her soul to Satan a long time before they ever met. She was a demon to lure him. She was a demon to lure him, was what I got out of it. That she was literally from Satan.
I'll have to reread that part. I don't think that happened. I don't know.
But the demon shows up. The demon shows up.
So Ambrosia, in his moment of weakness, as he is a weak coward, as we have proved time and time again throughout this book, that he's like, well, you know what, fuck, just call up this demon. He calls up the demon shows up, and he's like, well, sell me your soul. And he's like, well, no, that's not part of the deal. Do you want anything else? And he's like, no, I want your soul. I'm Satan. This is what I do.
This is how
I get
it works.
your soul. And Ambrosia's like, no, never mind. Like, he's about to sign the paper and then goes, no, I will not do it. And then, like, the demon disappears. And Ambrosio feels great pride in himself for denying Satan. He just feels
then
very
they
good
come
about
to
it.
get him to torture him, and he's like, yeah, change my mind.
Yeah. and the demon goes, like, okay, you're a bitch. And if you call me again, I'm going to tear you to hell.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to tear you up, I'm going to consume your flesh, and I'm going to drag your soul to hell. That's what's going to happen if you call me again. And Ambrosia's like, I will not do such a thing. And then they come to unlock the door, and Ambrosia's like, devil, help me again. And the demon shows up, and he signs the paper, he signs his soul away, and the demon just grabs him up and, like, takes him out as soon as, like, the Inquisition, like, opens the door.
The whole thing was that... Because it's actually, I think the ending is like the funniest part. Because he's like, but because remember that Ambrosio was a foundling. They found him on the steps, and they're like, by the way, Antonia, totally your sister.
Elvira, your mother.
You just banged your sister.
And murdered your mother. Bye!
And then Ambrosio's like, oh, I just want out of here. And the demon's like, what, you just want out of here? That's all you want? Just to get out of here? And he's like, yes, just get me out of this cell. That's all I want, to get out of the cell. And so they pick him up, they take him off, and he's dropped on this craggy beach where he's lame because he's been his legs are broken on the rocks, and he's just sitting there, and the tide's coming in, and the demon shows up and is like, hey, how's it going? And he's like, well, this really kind of sucks because I'm about to die. Can you take me somewhere else? And he's like, all you said was that you wanted out of the cell.
Yeah.
So, deed done.
He was like, take me to Matilda, take me to Matilda. And the devil's like, oh, you'll see her where you're going, basically.
And that's
the end of the book.
That's the end of the
book.
book.
Ends.
Yeah, well, he dies. That's it. He's dead.
He's dead.
So,
Lorenzo marries Virginia.
mm-hmm.
Agnes marries Raymond. And it has like this really sad, almost melancholy part where it talks about like, it almost seems like Agnes and Raymond's life isn't all happy, but because they went through so much that all the pains of the future like meant nothing. So it almost seems like they kind of had a rough life going forward, but it wasn't as bad as everything that happened to them beforehand.
Yeah, once you're like dealing with crazy monks and terrible nuns,
you have
and,
a
like,
baby in a cave that dies in your arms, and then you
like anything that
sleep
comes
with this
after
dead baby and pretend that it's alive just to keep you going.
That's like rock bottom. Like, that's the rock bottom point. That's when you like. That's the story you tell when people are like, "So, how'd you turn your life around?" Well, let me just tell you.
I got out of that cave. First of all,
yeah. So, there are a few things going on in this book. That first of all, there's like this anti-religious theme. That's just. I mean, that's just a general thing, and I feel like anytime you talk about like anti-religious stuff, you're just kind of hammering. It just feels cruel at some point. But there's this thing with purity. Like, Antonia is really pure. And Agnes is upset that her purity is gone. Clearly, after Raymond sleeps with her, she gets very upset that her purity is gone. Matilda is unpure because she
we never worried about her purity too much.
I think because she was kind of a badass. I mean, like, before she became a demon, she was kind of kick-ass. And I thought she was really cool. Like, before she decided, like, oh, I'm going to help this guy I'm into rape the girl he's into. She was actually, like, a really cool lady. Like, Ambrosio's trying to shame her, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do this.
Their conversations were probably, like, the best conversations. And, like, in the entire book was just her being like, bitch, please.
Yeah. And it's really surprisingly feminist for the time it was written that she's like,
Because the whole book isn't feminist at all.
No.
Horrible.
No. In fact, and the fact that she, like, ends up being a spawn of Satan is kind of like...
And it's almost like,
oh,
well, I feel
character.
like Matthew Lewis was also just like, you know, if there's like this strong woman in your life, she might be a demon.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Women are not that way.
Because they're not...
They're
they
virgins
don't have agency.
and they're pure. And yeah, that's what, like, Antonia doesn't really, I mean, she's pretty.
She's hailed at this as this amazing person.
She's pretty.
Because she's pure and she's pretty.
But that's
because she's
bullshit.
So
and
pure.
It's bullshit because it's like, it's keeping up this false idea of, it's just not real. Like, okay, it's just not real. It's just, she's being held back by people. I mean, the fact that her mother rewrites the Bible for her, taking out the naughty bits, that's doing something to her. And I think it's really, it's halting her progress in a way. It's slowing her down. And I think, you know, we see it sometimes. And there was this really interesting article I read once in Bitch magazine that was about the Twilight books. Because in the Twilight books, Bella is also very virginal and pure. Not to the extent that Antonia is, but she is very virginal and pure. And what the author of this article found was that when you go into the fan fiction sites, there's some fan fiction about Bella and Edward getting married, and Bella's still not sure if she's going to have sex with him. Like, she just doesn't know.
She doesn't understand.
She doesn't, like, and it's like there's purity, and then there's purity plus. There's purity, like, that goes beyond anything reasonable.
Yeah, and we also see it with Agnes, who has a baby and doesn't know, like, she basically doesn't know what happened. She's just like, here's a baby I have now. What do I do?
And she doesn't know how to take care of it.
Right.
That's why the baby dies, because she doesn't know. I mean, she's pretty emaciated.
We can't fault her too bad. She's chained to a cave. Then she's been living off bread and water. But she has, like, no idea, like, what to do once this baby is born.
Yeah.
She just knows that she has to hold it and keep it warm. Like, that's That's all she knows. She admits to, like, she does not know how to feed it.
So I'd say, like, part of it is just, making sure that people know enough to keep their babies alive. People know enough that if, like, someone's going to rape them, they know what's happening. Like, you can't keep people in total innocence.
Antonia
like,
didn't even know that she had been sexually assaulted. Like, when she was first assaulted by Ambrosia in that one room, she didn't even understand that she had been sexually assaulted. Like, that's what that was.
Yeah. And it's because she was too...
Because she didn't read the whole Bible.
If you are going to read the Bible, read the whole Bible. Not just part of it that your mom lets you.
That is the moral of the month.
There's a few morals. No. Don't eat chicken on Fridays.
Don't eat chicken on Fridays.
Read the whole Bible. Don't make a deal with the devil because he's kind of a jerk.
He's going to trick you.
He's tricking you. He's lying. He's like a bad genie from a Disney movie. Not a Disney movie because that genie was nice, but like...
The monkey's paw.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Each wish has dire consequences.
Yeah. That's exactly it. And that's it. That's what happens with the devil. So those are the morals. And don't be a feminist at all.
Don't be a feminist. That's a bad idea because you're obviously in league with Satan if you are.
Uh-huh.
Matthew Lewis is English?
Yeah, he's a Brit.
Okay.
And he wrote it when he was 19, which I think I said. But
yeah.
Like,
he wrote it as a clever guise for his poetry. Which
that's
is
just
not true. That's just me.
That's me.
I have read nothing on that.
Let me just tell you. So there's something very weird because before like I said, I read it, but then there's so much going on that's so weird. I checked the Wikipedia page and they're like, Ambrosio is really trying. Like they try to make Ambrosio seem like the victim, and I don't know where they're getting this from, but he's such an asshole.
He's been an asshole through the entire book.
Yeah.
It's not like he was a good monk. He was like a good person that had strayed.
Yeah.
He was always set up for failure, just for flaws in his character.
And that's like, I mean, I was reading it and I was like, really? They're getting this out? Anyway, that's why they have to have women edit those Wikipedia pages. Have you heard about this? Where they have the sit-ins? Yeah. To edit Wikipedia pages because... If not, men will be like, dude was the victim in this the rapist guy who's just the victim of his circumstances.
If she wasn't so pretty, he wouldn't have had
If she wasn't
feelings.
So pure, she would have just had sex with him in the first place.
Well, Matilda did, and look at what happened to her.
Well, see?
She just becomes an accomplice.
You can't do anything.
If you're
a woman, don't make any choices about your own body. That's the moral of the monk. New moral, if you're a woman... No choices about your own body. Yeah, don't have sex, but also don't not have sex.
Also try to stay away from the church. Church is a bad
place. Don't
place.
Become a nun if you have a boyfriend.
She was kind of forced into that.
Yeah. Or don't.
Yeah, these women had absolutely, they had to do everything that their families, they had no resources. They had no way to get out.
Yeah. I think
because, Agnes was also just, because, she couldn't leave her family. Women couldn't leave their families.
Where would she go?
And, that was also Antonio's problem, too, because her mother was destitute. And, she had no friends. She had no family. She had nothing. Because her crazy aunt, also left at some point in the book, got married, and stayed in this random town.
Her aunt was crazy and very weird. Okay, women having no agency. This brings us to next week, because we got to talk business. We always do business. In the last 5 minutes. Next week, we're talking about Jane Eyre. The plot won't
I'll be back again.
Yeah, Kiyomi will be back again.
I'll be back.
The plot won't take as long as it took this time. Obviously, we were talking about a lot with this plot. But next time, Jane Eyre, a lot of people already know it. Wife in the Attic.
I know Jane Eyre a lot better than I know The Monk. The Monk was pretty new to me. I enjoyed it immensely.
The Monk is new to everyone. I feel like it's a good book, but it's new to everyone.
Yeah.
So next week we're talking about Jane Eyre. We're actually going into a Bronte block. So we're going to do Jane Eyre. The week after that we're doing Wuthering Heights, and then the week after that we're doing The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, which is Anne Bronte's book. And Anne Bronte wrote women who weren't attracted to assholes, which is kind of a break from her sisters. So that's good. Yeah, because Charlotte and Emily kind of have.
They're into those asshole men.
They are so into them. And what else? Oh, so since we've got some time here, last 4 minutes, business time. You can support Bibliophilia by liking our Facebook page. You can leave us reviews. Leave nice reviews on iTunes. You can subscribe on iTunes. You can...
And it's under just Bibliophilia?
Yeah, Bibliophilia on iTunes. If you do a search, you'll find it. We're also on Stitcher, Bibliophilia. If you go to... There's another one. Oh, patreon.com/Bibliophilia. You find us. We're on Libsyn, but nobody uses that because that's just the feed that goes. So you can go to Libsyn if you want, and that's fine. Libsyn.com. Bibliophilia.libsyn.com.
What's the Facebook page?
Facebook.com/Bibliophilia podcast.
Podcasts. Okay.
There's a lot of social media involved. I didn't realize how heavy people had to get into social
Bibliophilia
media.
just got an Instagram.
Yeah, Bibliophilia podcast. That's on Instagram, and then Bibliophilia pod on Twitter. So much social media.
Half those I didn't even know what they are.
I was just making things up. I'm actually
Half
just
of
making
these
things
aren't
up.
real.
Yeah, just totally made up. So that's our show for today. Read The Monk if you ever get a chance, and maybe you'll get a better understanding of it than anything we could have conveyed, because we tried our best, but it was a little weird. We just broke the audio
Like,
here.
whoops.
But next week, Jane Eyre should be a good show, so tune in. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.